Hi guys, welcome to our Simplifying the Classics class. Today we are going to be recreating Claude Monet's Water Lily Pond or Water Lilies piece. So for this piece today we will need an A3 sheet of paper, we will need a selection of paints. Obviously if you're using pens or pencils or pastels, then you'll need a selection of those. Now I'm going to do this one with acrylics, so I have a couple of different shades of green that I can mix up. I have a blue, I have white and yellow for mixing and doing highlights. I have some black if I want to darken any of the colours or add any shadowing in. And I also have my crimson red. There are some spots on some of the flowers which have this kind of pink tinge to it, so we can mix some of the red in with the white to just get that nice pink colour. Now, as well as having your selection of paints, you will also need a few brushes to hand as well. Now I've got a couple of different smaller brushes. I've also got this fan brush as well, which will help to create some interesting textures on the plants. Now I have a few of these. Let me grab my brush pot. Now I have lots of different brushes, so I have fan brushes of different sizes, so you know, if you've got a bigger one you can use that, or for the finer details you can use a small one, but I'm going to start with the smaller ones for now, having the others on hand just in case I need them. As well as that, you may want to grab some tape if you want to tape your paper down. Now, as I've done with previous simplifying classes, I'm going to sketch out the initial layout or the guidelines in a pen so that they show up really well for you on camera. But obviously this is your opportunity to sketch down your guidelines in pencil and then build on top of those. I would suggest just using nice faint lines that you can either rub out or that you know are going to be easily covered by the medium that you're using. So this is the piece that we are looking at recreating. Now you'll notice this image is slightly cropped, it's quite square. It's up to you, you can either do the same thing and just trim your paper down to a square, or you can just carry on the foliage and the water at the top and bottom and create a rectangular version of it. So as you'll see, the piece is mainly made up of blues and greens with some sort of pale white highlights in there too. And as I say, the occasional speckling of pink with some of the flowers and a little kind of browny black towards the bottom where there's some shading. So let's get started. So the main focal piece on this painting is the bridge. So that's where we're going to start. Our bridge goes, it's pretty central on my page, but if you look at the image here, it's kind of just above center. So somewhere just above the center point is where you want to be putting your bridge. So we are going to create this kind of arched line across the center of the page. Now you'll notice I didn't start at the edge on this side, and that's because there's a lot of foliage, greenery, plants and things on this side, so you don't actually see the edge of the bridge on that side. And then we're going to go in and draw the next line. So this is the railing that's on the side nearest us. Now you'll notice I'm leaving some little gaps every few inches, and you'll see why in just a moment. This is where we're going to go in and soften those edges and come down. So these are the vertical posts on the bridge. And then we'll go in and put the bottom on. So this is the floor of the bridge where you would walk. That's nice thick bridge at the bottom there. And what we're going to do, about halfway in these rectangles, we're going to have another horizontal spar, which is like a support brace, I guess you'd call it. This is probably the most detailed part of the whole picture, and the rest of it is quite abstract and just kind of lots of colour and pen strokes. And what we're going to do, again, working on this bridge, we're going to go and put in the handle rail, like the top rail, on the other side of the bridge. So you can just add in a couple more lines. But remember, once you've got this top rail on the other side, you're also going to want to do the vertical posts. So you can draw those in too. They're obviously going to be behind the spars that are at the front. And then also you could put in a couple more extra lines for where the middle, the center horizontal bar is on the one on the far side. Apologies for the banging. My neighbour is obviously doing renovations. Or maybe hanging pictures, who knows? Okay, so we've got our bridge, the basics of our bridge in place. Now for the rest of it, just bringing back the original picture, we've got several different plants here. So this top corner here looks very much like a willow, like a weeping willow. So what we're going to do in this top corner, we'll kind of leave that in shot so that you can see it, but down this part here is kind of like the outline for that tree. So I'm going to go in and just kind of draw this line of these kind of round, lumpy, droopy lines almost. We don't want anything too detailed. We just want to kind of separate this pot off, because all of the detail that's going to be on this picture really comes from the layers of paint and the detail that we're adding. It's not defined lines. It's just kind of guiding you as to where we're going to be doing the particular plants. Now over this side, coming down where the end of the bridge is, we've got some kind of undefined plants, but we're going to just kind of draw in some long leaves, some random foliage. Just to give us a guide so we know where we're working. And coming down here, again, we'll draw some more of this grass. It could be reeds, it could be tall flowers. We're just going to mark out that space where we're going to be doing those kind of plants. And again, these kind of spiky plants and tall leaves and things are going to fill all of this space here. So it's up to you how much you actually want to mark them out. I wouldn't go too mad with it if I were you. I would keep your lines fairly minimal so that you're not painting over lots of graphite. So as we come down, the weeping willows have all got fairly sort of hanging leaves. They're all coming down and they're going to continue to hang in the background of our bridge here, and the lines are going to keep kind of weeping down here, and there'll be some more kind of weeping lines as we come down to the bottom. Underneath the bridge on this side, we've got more of this kind of grass. So we're just kind of marking that out. Might be another separate one, another plant over here. It's just to give you some ideas as to the type of brush strokes that you're going to be adding at this point. So this is all kind of grass and sweeping brush motions. This corner up here, if we go back to our original picture, it looks to me like a really big tree or a massive bush. Now, if we're assuming that this is a big weeping willow tree, then this is likely to be another large tree in the background. Although, because it's abstract, we obviously can't really tell what it is. But there's no lines, there's no kind of direction. It's just lots of like clumped together marks, leaves. So it is very sort of abstract. So all I'm going to do is kind of draw in a few kind of wiggly lines just to remind me that when I come to do this part, it's just going to be random blotches using the brush to create those textures and add in those colors. Like so. But you don't need to add those in. This is just to kind of give you that visual representation of what we are doing. And then coming down here, this is where all of the water starts, and it kind of alternates between blue and green, almost like we're kind of looking at a stream. So these plants that are coming down here, and the grass that's going down there is almost like the banks of a river or a stream. And we are basically stood possibly on another bridge or on the bank of where the stream starts. So all of this is water and it kind of disappears off into the distance. So all of this here, kind of this mark here, is kind of where the water starts. Now I'm putting some wiggly lines in here. And what it's going to do is kind of help to remind me to break up the colour that we're doing for the water with the blues and the greens. But I'm really not going to add too much detail to this water at this point, because I want it all to just be kind of formed naturally with the paint. And coming down here, you know, we can maybe mark out some of the places where we want to have some of our water lilies. Just kind of rough squiggles for where some of them are going to go. And then interestingly, if we again go back to the original picture, there's quite a lot of vertical lines in here as well, and I'm not sure maybe whether that's like a recess in the bed of the stream, so it kind of comes down and flows down and comes along, so almost like a step in the stream, and that's where maybe the vertical lines come in. So you could absolutely do that. You could put in some vertical lines into some of your pieces. Again, I'm not going to put tons of them in, it's just to remind me that I'll maybe put some there, and then maybe in a smaller piece over here I'll have some more here. And all of this space here that we've got, this is where we're going to add in, like the whole of the water is covered with these really pretty water lily flowers. So we don't want to draw in every single flower. These are just your guidelines to get you started. So that's where I'm going to leave the guidelines for now. So hopefully you've got something that vaguely represents what we've got here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my other sketch that I've already done in pencil, which you may or may not be able to see. You might just about be able to make it out on the screen. So I'm going to switch mine out, and what I'm going to do is grab some tape. Now hopefully you can see the main portion of the picture. I'm going to tape mine down because I want it to have a nice clean border when I'm done. So if I mask it, it'll keep that nice border on it, because I'll be framing it in a clip frame. And so rather than mounting it, I can just put the piece straight into the frame and it'll look nice and fresh. There we go. So now we need to decide on our colours. Now, as I say, most of them are greens and blues. Let's bring that one back in while we're talking so that you can see. So I've got my palette and I've obviously got some water to rinse my brushes out. So I'm going to start putting some of my greens and blues into my palette. What we want to do is kind of build up the colours. And then we're going to go in with like the yellows and whites on top to create those highlights. So in my palette here, I'm going to put a mixture of colours, or a mixture of greens anyway. I'm going to put some of this pale olive green. Some of this leaf green, which is actually very bright for a leaf green. And I've also grabbed a few more of my greens out of my art box. I've got a Viridian, a sap green, and, well, just green. So I'm going to use a combination of all of them, and I would encourage you guys to do the same if you're painting. Have a collection of different shades in your palette that you can mix and make even more shades with. I like this Viridian actually because it is a kind of bluey green colour, and I think that might help with some of the transitions from the blue to green. So we're going to get lots of different shades. I'll not put the blue in yet. We'll work on the green first, and then we'll go in with the blue. So I think we're going to start, in fact I am going to put some white in my palette because I want to create a lighter green as well. So I'll be able to use that. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in this top corner, start working on this willow, bearing in mind that the marks on this side are kind of coming down vertically, as opposed to these, which are kind of like little bushes and clumps. So we're going to go in with some different shades. We're not going to do it exactly the same as the original picture, obviously. This is where we start kind of creating our own. Now I'm going to put just a smidgen of this light green in with the white. Give it a mix. I'm just going to kind of test some out, if you like, on the top here. It's only a fairly light colour, so we can always add a darker colour over the top of it. In fact, you know what, guys? I think I'm going to immediately switch over to a bigger brush. So I'm going to wet my brush and go back into that lighter colour. There we go. I'll start putting some of this colour in. Just lay down a base. It's all about building up layers. I say this every time I create a picture. It's all about putting down base layers and creating texture. But it is true. You want to build up the colour and build up the textures. So we're just going to go in with this lighter colour, and down the side here where the willow kind of meets this other unidentified plant, we're going to come down here with a lighter colour as well. Just kind of have some random splodges of it throughout here. And then I'm going to start going in with a slightly darker colour, so I'm going to maybe go with my olive green a little bit. Now notice I'm not painting strokes, I'm just kind of dabbing the paint on. This is, you know what, this is actually a piece that you could at push even create as a finger painting, because you could literally just be kind of dotting the colours on. It would probably be quite effective. It's going to look really random and really messy to begin with while we're just putting down these initial colours. But also, if you have a blend of colours, so I've got this kind of olive green and this lighter green, both kind of mixed together on my brush at the moment. And so as I'm laying the colour down, it's actually kind of creating this really cool kind of two-tone effect. So just kind of keep adding in these colours, bearing in mind that when we add the highlights, our highlights are going to be kind of added in this kind of downward motion, because we want to create that look as if it is a weeping willow where it's all kind of coming down. But I think most of the detail, I think we'll really kind of see it and help it to pop when we add the highlights at the end. So for now, I'm just, as I say, I'm just kind of putting in the colours kind of roughly where I know I want them to go. I'm going to be a little bit careful where the bridge is, but then we can define that more clearly when we do the bridge itself. But now I want to do something quite bold. I want to add in some of the darker colours into this middle part. So I'm actually going to go in with my sort of bluey green colour that I have and start laying some of that down. Being a little bit more careful this time with how I'm adding it. Kind of creating a slight curve at the top of some of those lines to make it look like it is kind of coming down from the center of the tree. Then you can, if you want, kind of create some lines rather than splodges. It depends on the look that you're going for. You could do some lines, but what I'm going to do afterwards, once I've got these kind of blues and greens down, is I'm going to be going in with obviously highlights and shadows and adding more depth. So it's kind of up to you what you want to do with it, really. At the moment, it looks like a hot mess, obviously, but we're gonna start adding definition to it as we go. Now, as we come down to this point, towards the bridge, there are a lot more shadows. So the parts that are down here are a lot darker than the parts that are at the top. So you want to be going in with your darker green towards the bottom here. As we come back up here, I'm going to go into my white and start adding whites down this side. Obviously it's going to mix with the paint underneath it, and that's fine. It's just to kind of create some lighter tones and some highlights. notice how I'm not leaving these as defined lines. I'm just kind of blobbing it, if you like, onto the page. And that's because I'm going to go in with another brush afterwards to add more detail. What I do want to do is add a little bit more of our bluey green colour in here. Just keep tapping away, keep adding it in. Remember, we're not looking to replicate Monet's work completely. We're kind of creating our own version in our own style. So everybody works in a different way. Everybody even sees things in a different way. The way that you look at a painting and see it is going to be very different to how I see it or how anybody else sees it. So it's really about just finding what works for you, what you enjoy, what you like, and going with it. I've given you this basic outline, these kind of guidelines to work within, but what you do with them is really up to you. I'll show you how I'm creating this one, but you could do something completely different. Adding in some more of this dark foliage at the bottom. So we've kind of got the lighter stuff around the top, obviously where the sun's hitting it, and then down here is more kind of in the shadows. We're going to have our bridge. working it until you're happy with it, really, until you reach a point that you like the way that your weeping willow looks. What I'm going to do is leave that section to dry up a bit now, before I go and add in any more detail, and we'll start working on some of the other greenery and see what develops. Once this is dry, I probably will go in and add more whites and things to it, but for now I'm going to leave this to dry. And what I'm going to do is put some blue in my palette. So I want to start incorporating blues into some of the flowers as well, and some of the plants. And I'm also going to put some yellow in my palette. So I want to yellow up some of the greens and add in some yellow highlights too. So I'm going to start by actually dunking my brush in the yellow and marking out some of this area here. Now I've still got green on my brush, that was done on purpose. I wanted the yellow to kind of mix with the green. Now obviously be careful going back into the yellow, because you're just going to put green into it, but this kind of gives you this really cool texture of different shades of yellow and green. So we're just building up this plant down here. Going with a touch of green, sort of bluey green, just to sort of create this bushy plant over here. And we do want some green in there. Some green bits. Again, just kind of blocking out this colour for now. I think what I'm going to do, we'll try and experiment, because you know how I like experimenting. Put that brush in the water. I'm going to take my fan brush, dry fan brush for now, we'll try it dry first, and just gently dip the edges in. So there's hardly anything on there, it's just kind of on the edges. And we'll see what effects we can create by just placing it down. Okay, so we can add in some highlights, some texture. That's interesting. Okay, I'll go back to my other brush, and I'm actually going to get a bit of blue. I want to create something vaguely plant looking, like bushy plant. It's going to kind of be hidden by the plant that we're going to do at the bottom, so it's mainly the top part that I'm focusing on for now. I want to get some of the blues in there, and I want to get some green in there. Maybe a spot of yellow up there. This is probably the messiest piece I've done so far. I'm doing all of the things that you shouldn't do when you paint by mixing colours on your brush as you go. But hey ho, rules are there to be broken, right? So underneath, see, all of these things I'm going to come back to. They're not going to be left like this, but I need them to dry to a certain extent before I can add more. And then down here I'm going back into my blue, and this is where I'm going to start. In fact, this might be another interesting one for the fan brush. We'll see. So we're just going in and creating these kind of spikes, these long grassy things. I'm going in with blue to begin with. I'm thinking these are maybe some sort of like reeds. And then I'm going to go in with my green, pick a green, multiple greens. Oh, there we go, like that. And we're going to put some green in. Putting the green over the blue and kind of in between the blue, just to give us some different colours, different tones. But the brush strokes I'm keeping as these kind of spiky strokes for this particular plant. And then down here, where they all start to kind of come together and merge into the water, I'm going to have a more kind of wiggly line with not so much definition, because it's just where the water is moving up. And then we're going to go over here. Now this is back to our kind of dark greens again, behind the bridge. We're kind of carrying on our weeping willow over here, the darker colours. We're going to go in with some of the slightly lighter colours, where we're sort of closer to the sun, not so much in shadow anymore. Now moving over here, we have quite a dark patch on the original painting. So I'm going to go in with my bluey green colour and probably my darker green, and then eventually I'll probably mix in a little bit of black. So I'm going to put this colour down because it's almost like there's some shade before or next, like between the two trees. In fact, what I'm going to do is put just a tiny bit. I say a tiny bit, my black never comes out in tiny bits, it always comes out in huge dollops. Yeah. There we go. That black is nearly run out, that's why it's so troublesome to get out. And I'm actually going to go in with my black as well. Now, I'm not leaving it like this, don't panic. I'm going to work this black because I don't want it to stay as black, really. Although, again, some of it down here in our shaded parts will be fine. Kind of just add some randomly in the shady areas. But up here, we're going to keep working this with our greens. We don't want it to dry, we want to blend it carefully before it dries. So we'll go in with our shades of green on top. Keep dabbing at it. If you're concerned it's a little bit too dark, you can dab in some white. You can really have fun with acrylic paints. You could just add different colours on top of each other. But we do want a slightly different tone here from what was on our willow plant. So that's why we're creating this slightly strange and obscure section. Right, okay, so up in the whole of this pot over here, again, it's just going to be sort of dabbing away at colours. I'm going to, over this side, I want to kind of create some shading. So I'm going to use my blacky greeny brush that I currently have. Kind of put some of that colour in around the edges over here. In fact, what I might do is, while it's still drying, is kind of add just a little bit of black and green around this edge too. Kind of frame it, kind of vignette style, if you like. Sort of frame the piece a little bit. And then, so I've got my blacks, and then I'm going to go in with my greeny blue. Now, because I'm not washing my brush in between times, I'm getting that kind of dirtier colour, but that's kind of what I'm wanting for this particular part. And then I'm going to go with my more sort of greeny shade of green. I want to start maybe doing some more curved lines. Kind of want this abstract, random, natural kind of look rather than lots of straight lines. Dump in some yellow. Going to be some highlights over there. Back to our bluey green again. Now at this point I have multiple shades of green on my brush. It's up to you. If you want to clean your brush in between dips, absolutely do so. For this particular painting, like I never normally do this, but for this particular painting I quite like the effect that it's having by just leaving the colours on the brush and just adding to them. But it's absolutely your call. If you don't want to be dipping between colours, totally understand that. Okay, and obviously we want to continue with our colours under the bridge. So dab in more of whatever colours you've been using. And then a little bit underneath. My brush is getting dry now. Just find that the bottom of the bridge there. We're going to go in underneath with some more of these kind of spiky leaves over here, this kind of grass. Now obviously we don't want the white paper showing in the background, so what I'm going to do is kind of create this kind of greeny colour background for said spiky plants, or well, grass. I'm pretty sure it's grass. And then we're going to go in with a different shade. So for example, you could go in with the white, although we're obviously just trying to take out the white from the background. You could use white to kind of create accents. You could use a different green. You could use the same green, just with more coats. You could mix your greens and see which one looks best for your picture. Now what I would probably do is switch brushes for doing that, so that you've got a smaller brush for getting those fine lines. But again, I'm just wanting to lay down these base colours and then go back in and add some more detail afterwards. So I'm going to start working on the water and the plant life that we have going on down here. Now these parts where we marked out the lines, the horizontal lines, they're quite dark, and to me looked like, I say, that there's bits of brown in there, there's bits of green in there, It looks like there is potentially some grass type plants growing across them, as well as there being obviously earth and these sort of vertical lines. So we can just kind of have a play around. You just kind of hint at some of these vertical lines. You don't have to go in and include every single one equally spaced all the way across. You can just put in a few here and there to just give the impression that it is potentially this sort of little bank. So I'm taking a big dollop of my white and putting it in with my blue. I want to create a light blue for the water. And I'm going to start just filling in these blank spaces. And as I come down the page, towards the bottom, I'm going to go in just a slightly darker shade of the blue, and I want to leave some space as well where I'm going to go in with some greens, and obviously we want space for the flowers, but I think what I'm going to do is kind of create a bit of a line across, kind of, we don't want any harsh lines because obviously this is all water and plants, but we want some different tones of blue being mixed in. And then we'll go in and add green, and then we'll go and add some of our like yellows and whites and pinks and things on top for the flowers. I'm going to go in and start adding some of that green in as well. Use slightly different shades of green. You can incorporate some of the shades that we've already used. You can have some lighter ones, some darker ones. I realise I'm painting just off of the screen just now, bear with me, I'm just adding in the bottom section of green, just obviously working my way down to fill the page. You can just keep going with your greens. You can add in a slightly darker component at the bottom if you want to kind of create that extra bit of shading. You might decide to put in just a touch of black, just the tiniest bit of black along the bottom, just to kind of create that sort of shadow that's on the main picture. I'll just bring that back in. See, along here there is this kind of darkened area. So we can kind of add something on the bottom there. If I move my camera ever so slightly, you'll be able to see where I'm working at. So I'm just putting in that little bit of black at the bottom, but I'm kind of mixing it in with some green too, so that it's not just solid black. I'm just kind of blending that into the green along the bottom. And you can always go in and put some more green on top of it if you want to kind of camouflage it a little bit, but sort of obviously add that depth to the bottom of your picture. So we're doing quite well. We've got all of these different colours going on the water. but I want to add some more colours. Want to add a little bit more darkness over, where will we put it? Probably over here, going in with the sort of darkish green that I've got, kind of creating part of another one of those ledges that we've done across here. I kind of want to create one, or the idea of one, over this side as well. So I'm just going to use my dark green to do that. So I'm laying down some green. And then I'm going to go in with my black, just a tiny bit of black like we did at the top. I'm just going to kind of add in some more of these vertical lines that we had. Kind of give that impression of that step down again. Now obviously I'm painting wet on wet at the moment, so if you leave it to dry, you might find it easier to paint over when you add the layers, if you don't particularly want it blended. If you're happy for them to blend, then you can absolutely do wet on wet. So now that we've got onto the water, I want to create some more depth. I'm going to add some more lines kind of going across the page to give that idea of moving water. And also what I want to do is add in some yellow into the water. So I'm going to take my brush, and I don't want huge bits of yellow, but I just want some little bits. Little golden reflections. I think what I'm going to try, again back to the experimenting, in this top section here, to try and kind of blend it and bring it together, I'm going to go back to my fan brush. We're going to try something out. I'm going to go back with some white. light blue. In fact, maybe a bit of light and dark blue. Kind of going with both. I'm going to kind of cover up the more obvious lines that we created. We can still see them and they still add texture, but without being too obvious. To mix up a little bit more light blue. So just add some really interesting textures by dabbing it on using a fan brush. Something I don't use often. You can get some quite interesting effects with it. Also helps you to kind of blend in these sections because you don't want a solid line. So using this kind of brush and this sort of dabbing technique, you can just kind of blend them in. One thing that fan brushes are really good for is kind of on plants and on things that have random lines. Trees and shrubs and things, but also water, because like we're getting this really cool mixed effect that's helping us to blend all of our areas together. Actually tempted to go over the green lines that we've created with the fan brush as well to create a similar sort of texture. Actually quite liking that, guys. It also kind of has that look at the top of like splashing water as well. Definitely liking that. Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is just rinse my brush quickly and then we'll dab on some of the green paint. Let me see, which shade are we going to use? I think I want some of that green, maybe a little bit of the bright green. Again, just kind of creating and mixing a new shade of green out of the various shades that I have in my palette just now. Let's see. There's quite a lot on there. You don't want your brush, your fan brush really loaded. Really like the effect that this is giving, especially on these parts where some of this is meant to be like grass and shrubs and things growing out of the water. I think that gives it quite a nice effect. Just mix a bit more. In fact, while we're here, add some detailing to these plants. Okay, so we're quite pleased with how our greens and our blues have come out across the bottom. Again, this is one of those pieces that you could just keep working on, keep adding to, but we have been going for a while, so I want us to move on. We need to start adding in some of the flowers. But before we could do that, we kind of need to give this area a little chance to dry. So whilst we leave that bit just now, kind of half rinse my brush, I want to maybe see if we can add just a little bit of definition to some of the the lines up here, some of the leaves of the plants up here. See what we can create. Not liking that as much. It's maybe a bit too much white on there. So we'll just even that out again with some more blue. I like the fact that it does kind of give us this hint of flowers and obviously foliage in the background. It's kind of what we want. So that's cool. It's given it a more interesting feel on there anyway. So again, not leaning on what you've done down here. Going to keep kind of working up. Now on here, I want to add some more yellow. I think I want to kind of lighten it up as well. And then maybe just hint back in there with a little bit of blue and maybe just a touch of green. It's not like the original picture. I just like it. And so, you know, that's what we're going with. Now, up here, this is your opportunity to go back in and cast some more highlights or more shadows. So I want to kind of create a few highlights coming down. I have this slightly lighter area at the top here. I've got a little bit of yellow A little bit of white. The yellow helps to kind of soften it. And then we're going to add in some more of the greens at the bottom, create some more of that texture. Then over here we can just go in and do exactly the same thing. You pick your shade. I'm going to go in with the bluey green I was using and add some more depth over here. You can have some lighter areas, some darker areas. So there we go. And remembering to just add in some texture in the background to the bridge as well. And again, once this part is a little bit drier, I want to go in with the white and the yellow again to create a highlight over this side. We have to be patient and we have to work on this in sections. So at the moment, most of my page is wet. What I want to do is I'm going to switch brushes now, and we're going to start working on the bridge. So just rinse that brush. So I'm going to get my my more pointed brush back again, and coming back to our reference picture, we have a kind of darker blue and a kind of a dark green on the bottom, and then we have this kind of darker to mid blue on the right, and this very pale blue, almost white, on the left hand side. So we're going to do our best to create something similar to that on our piece. So with our darkish blue, we're going to go across the bottom of our bridge. It's kind of a thinner part over there and a thicker part over here. And then whilst I've still got the blue on the brush, I'm going to start going in over this side. And the center. And there's the vertical posts from the front and back. And then it really kind of lightens up as it comes across. I'm going to kind of blend our light into our dark. Put a few highlights in over this side, kind of blending it over. And then we want to, what we've missed, a vertical over this side. Add that in. A slight one showing here. And And then we're going to go in with our green, a dark green. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my brush for a slightly finer brush. It doesn't have to be a tiny one, but I want to do some slightly more detailed work. So I want to be able to get a slightly finer line. So I'm going to drop down to a smaller one. And what I want to do is kind of make sure that my lines around the bridge panels are fairly clean. Kind of fill in any of the little white gaps that we've maybe missed around the bridge. Use different shades of green depending on what you've got around it. But what we also want to do is create that line of separation between the panels that are this side of the fence, or this side of the bridge rather, and the other side. I'm just going in, and we drew, obviously when we did the sketching, we drew all of these lines in. So depending on how neatly you've painted over them, or if you're messy like me and you've just kind of gone over them completely, you'll need to kind of work them back into the piece again so that there is a hint of them being there. Just working along the bridge, working in any of those little gaps and tidying up your bridge lines. So there's our bridge. Now obviously if you want to add in more highlights than I have done, you're very welcome to do so. But I think for today I'm going to leave my bridge like so. Just get that highlight there. Yeah, and I want to get the other bushes finished that are in the background. So shall leave my bridge there. So now going back in with the fan brush, I'm going to put yellows and whites into here again, like I did with the willow. Except this time they're not going to be coming down in a straight line. I want them to be a lot more random. Add some yellow into the mix. And then I'm going to pick my light green up again. Maybe give it a mix with a darker colour. To go sort of a mid green. And just blend some of that in. Okay, liking that. So working our way down, rinse the brush again with the yellow and white into some of the plants under the bridge, just to lighten those up a little bit. Drop in some highlights into these plants. And then I'm going to want to add white into the water, even more so than we have done already. Now remember what I said at the beginning, the water is pretty much covered in these water lilies, so a lot of this space is taken up by flowers. So by adding in some white flecks down here, that starts to give us the idea of there being things on the water as well as there being air bubbles. Now what I'm going to do is go back to my small brush. I need to clean it. At this point, I really should be cleaning my water out, but seeing as we're nearly finished, I will persevere. I'm going to go into my white and I'm going to start creating these kind of white blobs every so often on my page. These are going to be the water lilies, obviously. Obviously, bear in mind, the further up you go in the picture, kind of the further back you're going perspective wise. So if you're going to have big water lilies, the big ones would go at the front, and as you work your way back in the water, the lilies would be slightly smaller, just a perspective thing. Just an aside for you. Now at this point, I'm going to grab my red. Remember how at the beginning I said I had crimson red? Finally going to start using it. Only need a tiny bit. Tiny bit. And again, with your fine brush, I'm going to grab a dollop of my white out and a tiny bit of the red. I only need a tiny amount, especially if you're using highly pigmented paints, because you want to just create this kind of just gentle pink colour, like sort of a baby pink. And then we're literally going to just kind of dab into the centre of these water lilies. Now, I might want a little bit more. I kind of want some of it to be a little bit darker, but I want to have that lighter option too. Oh, that's better. I kind of want it to stand out. This is like the blossom of the lilies, I guess. Pretty flowers. Just going to go ahead and dab in that pink. Not too much, try not to get too carried away. I always get carried away. I always end up putting too much on. But obviously remember, in the original painting, the pink from the lilies was very subtle, and not overly obvious. Most of the painting was blue and green, but I quite like this shade of pink. It makes the flowers pop quite nicely. we go. I hope you have enjoyed this class. Let me tilt the camera, go back up to the top of the piece, work all the way down. There you go, to the bottom. Now, before we go, I will show you why I taped down the picture. Now, obviously, you can't see the whole thing, so I'll show you the bottom half anyway. Now, when you take the tape off, don't just rip it off. Go really slowly, really gently, and pull it kind of away from the page. You have to be a little bit careful. If your acrylics have dried, you might run the risk of a little bit of tearing. No, we're all good. That bit came off okay. Do the same down the other side. And I see across the top a little bit of our green paint got onto the border, but we can clean that up. See, I'll show you at the top. See here and here, there's just some slight kind of seepage under the tape, but to be fair, the rest of it seems to have done pretty well. So that's the picture. See, and you've got this nice fresh border around it now. So I'll take some photographs of this once it's dried, and I'll add them on so that you can see it properly, or take some footage of it. But that's your Water Lilies by Monet. I hope you've had fun. Take care, guys.